20th century is the century of the globe. The Earth has been explored. Now humans enter space, and for the first time, they see their own planet whole. Up here, the world looks defenseless. From space, it can be annihilated by missiles or encircled by messages in an instant. Human beings exploited the planet. Now they know they must protect it, or perish. 1,000 years of history. Millennium. As the century began, people explored inwards to see themselves in utterly new ways. The Viennese doctor, Sigmund Freud, sought the inner secrets of human behavior and motive.
Guten Tag, Herr Dr. Freud.
He described a zone he called the unconscious, in which the torments of the psyche were hatched.
Ich verließ das Haus in großer Eile, einige Besorgungen zu machen. In Graben.
Patients came to see Freud because they were nervous, anxious, or depressed.
Aber niemand half mir.
Listening to them, Freud worked out new theories about the mind.
Wissen Sie, der Herr Breuer,
Invariably, he traced neurotic symptoms to sex, which he saw as the driving force of human nature.
Das ist für meine Nerven nicht so gesund.
Dreams were a route into the haunted region of the unconscious. A dream's imagery gave clues to buried longings and anxieties. Freud illuminated the secrets of his patient's past in order to explain the present and to heal. Many of his patients were women, but he confessed he didn't wholly understand them.
The great question, which I have not been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want?
Freud's ideas, shocking at first, dominated mid-20th century thinking. But he was a product of his age. When he studied neurosis, Freud was confronting the suppressed rage and fear of people adrift in a changing world. He warned,
"No one who, like me, conjures up the most evil of those half-tamed demons that inhabit the human breast and seeks to wrestle with them, can expect to come through the struggle unscathed."
Introspection and rebellion inspired the painting and music of the age. The stable 19th century vision of cosmic order was breaking up. The Norwegian Edvard Munch painted The Scream.
I looked at the flaming clouds that hung over the blue-black fjord and the city, like blood and a sword. I stood there, trembling with fright, and I felt a loud, unending scream, piercing nature.
Other artists portrayed the fragmented self. The Cubists revealed the structure beneath the surface. Pablo Picasso experimented with multiple perspectives on a single self. One group of artists, the Surrealists, painted dreams. Bizarre symbols provoked unease and shocked the public into new ways of seeing. Film, with its visual trickery, fascinated the Surrealists. In science, too, old certainties were overthrown. Physicists revealed a new, unreliable universe. Newton's principles of motion, which had been trusted for 200 years, were challenged by Albert Einstein. In 1905, he proposed his theory of relativity.
E is equal mc square, in which energy is third equal to mass.
The iron laws of nature turned out to be flexible. Scientists explored the human body. X-rays showed the skeleton. Microscopes exposed the inner structure of cells, the building blocks of life. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, the first modern antibiotic. Bacteria, the main cause of infection and disease, were dissolved and destroyed by the new drug. Penicillin was developed in time for large-scale use on wounded soldiers in World War II. Science could save life. It could also control life at the outset. By the middle of the century, a female contraceptive pill was developed, which regulated hormone levels. Women could choose when and if to have children. They won a new control of their lives and relationships. Scientists tapped the elemental powers of the universe. They isolated the atom, the basic unit of matter. Then they smashed it. Splitting the atom set off a chain reaction, which released a colossal burst of energy. The United States developed an atomic bomb. It was first tested in the desert south of Los Alamos in July 1945. Some scientists who worked on it were appalled.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
The nuclear shadow darkened the rest of the century. The 20th century brought total war. With modern armaments, one soldier could bring death to a regiment, a city, a nation. World War I was fought on an industrial scale. Its product was mass slaughter. Young men went off to pit their bodies against mechanized firepower. A generation was decimated. Automatic weapons wiped out lives in an instant. Man was the victim of his own machines. In the Soviet Union, Stalin and communism promised an end to war. But Stalin forced the peasants into collective farms. The result was famine in the Ukraine. Millions perished. Ideology could kill as surely as war itself. During Stalin's time, 22 million people died in the slave empire of his labor camps. In 1937, the Japanese invaded China. They killed over 6 million, most of them civilians. This was the age of dictators. Hitler too beguiled his people with promises. Then he launched them into war. More than 50 million died in the Second World War, soldiers and civilians. $27 million were Soviet citizens. $6 million were Jews. The Nazis organized an industrial operation to round up, transport, and murder the Jews of Europe. Then, at the war's end, an entirely new weapon, the atomic bomb. Two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were destroyed in seconds. Already sustained bombing had leveled great cities: Rotterdam, Dresden, Tokyo. Now, with atomic weapons, annihilation came in a single flash. Lethal radiation lingered in the earth and in the air. In China, Mao Zedong mobilized his people for revolution and what he called the Great Leap Forward. Landowners were shamed, their land taken away. Mao herded millions into the countryside. Disaster followed. The overworked soil turned to dust. The worst famine in human history killed some 30 million people. Cambodia. Dictator Pol Pot made war on his own people. Almost 1 in 3 Cambodians were sacrificed to his merciless vision of the future. All over the world, the killing went on in the 20th century. In Korea and Vietnam, in Rwanda and East Timor, in the Gulf, in Bosnia and in Kosovo. At the end of the century, warfare has grown more remote, more precise, and more deadly than ever before. The Statue of Liberty stands at the gateway to a nation built on immigration.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
These Chinese Americans are part of a world movement of peoples crossing oceans to settle into new lives abroad. In the 20th century, world population overflowed. At the millennium, there are 6 billion men and women on Earth. Millions move within their own countries. They travel to cities to find work and opportunities. Calcutta, India, contains more than 10 million people. In Tokyo, Japan, more millions jostle about their business in the country's limited space. Mexico City now covers 1,800 square miles of urban sprawl. The population has increased 5-fold in 50 years. The debris of daily life spreads ever outwards. One great population flow in the 20th century has been migration from countryside to town. Before 1950, most people in the world worked on the land. Now, almost half live in the urban spread. cities have always promised good money, freedom, excitement. Now they offer entry to the consumer paradise. Modern cities are an artificial environment, vertical, climatized, neon lit. Industry gathers in rural people in flight from relentless poverty. Shanty towns and slums cling to the edge of cities. Life here is mere survival. The gap between rich and poor has widened in this century. Women are the poorest of the world's citizens. Calcutta, India. Colonial ties once linked it to Europe. For India was the jewel in Britain's imperial crown. A 100 years ago, European powers still ruled colonies across the globe, governing with pomp and ceremony. By the mid-20th century, the European empires were fading away and out of history. And yet ties established in the colonial era survived. A northward migration began. People from India, Pakistan, the Caribbean came to Britain to fill the post-war labor shortage. The pattern was repeated. Migrants headed to Europe from the French overseas territories, from the Dutch colonies, and from the British Empire. This is Wembley, North London. Hindus have built here a magnificent new temple, crafted in India and exported to Britain stone by stone. Here, old and young worship the deities of their ancient religion, proudly maintaining their own culture. The border between Mexico and the United States. Each day, Mexicans wait for a chance to cross over. Many are turned back, but they will try again, desperate for opportunity. Los Angeles has the largest Mexican population in the world outside Mexico City. Spanish is now the first language of more than a quarter of the population of California.
Panorama Mundial con Jorge Gestoso y Patricia Yaniot.
Bienvenidos al Centro Mundial de CNN en Atlanta.
Muy buenas noches, estos son los titulares.
Buenos días, buenos días, buenos días.
Television and radio beam programs in Spanish to an expanding audience, coast to coast.
Bueno, amigos, ya son las 9:12 minutos. Las 9 de la mañana, pasados 12 minutos. Vámonos, líneas telefónicas. ¡Van al aire! ¡Aló! ¡Aló!
Bueno.
Hispanics now make up almost half of America's immigrant population, transforming the nation's cultural mix for the 21st century. Hispanics are the quickest growing group in America's ethnic mosaic. Keeping to their ways, yet sweeping confidently into America's culture. The 20th century has been the American century. The United States made itself the tallest, strongest economy on earth. At the heart of American success was the communications revolution. It changed the habits of the human race forever. In America, the telephone was invented, and the first continental network was created. Hollywood's film industry spread mass-produced entertainment. Radio and then television invaded every home.
Alan Freed's Rock and Roll Party!
American music and American movie stars became familiar throughout the world. The world's cities merged into a single marketplace. From America came a new international language, the imagery of advertising. In New York or Shanghai, the crowds wear the same clothes and yearn for the same brand name goods.
On peut dire que les esprits sont davantage tournés vers Saint-Denis que vers Silverstone. Oui, on pense beaucoup à l'équipe.
Diffused by satellite, television reaches every corner of the earth. For the first time, the human race can observe itself.
Pour la Coupe du Monde France 98, demain 12 juillet, la France jouera le jeu fatidique contre le Brésil. Ce sera la finale. Ce sera l'événement.
Satellites showed us pictures of the planet, just as men were preparing to leave it.
We copy you down, Eagle. Listen, the Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
Now, a worldwide audience shares great events as they happen, live. 200 million watched Princess Diana's wedding. 16 years later, 2.5 billion watched her funeral. Technology reduces the world to a village, where all can stare at their neighbors. Watching the big game, live on screen, is as real as being there. Nearly 2 billion of us watched the Soccer World Cup final in 1998. The new communications abolish the difference between night and day and dissolve distance. The mobile phone makes all its users reachable wherever they are. Technology encircles the earth, banishing darkness and silence. The microchip was invented in America. It changed the course of the communications revolution. New software transformed personal lives with microcomputers, email, laptops, computer games, the internet. In this new world, the United States is ahead of the rest. We took several thousand years to imagine ourselves as one species on a round planet.
It's one small step for man.
Now, at the end of this millennium, the human race talks to itself in space. A 1,000 years ago, Japan was isolated and had its own elaborate court culture. Now, Japanese executives in global corporations drive together at the Western game of golf. Japan became an economic superpower. In the late 20th century, it challenged American supremacy. Dynamism began to shift from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. All around the Pacific Rim, newly industrialized nations grew fast. Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. These are the tiger economies. Singapore is an island city, a self-made global metropolis. Its people celebrate their links with the West and with China. A 1,000 years ago, foreigners traveled the Silk Roads to China. They found the most refined and inventive civilization on Earth. Already China had printing, paper money, water clocks, the compass and gunpowder. Today, Shanghai on China's east coast is being transformed for the 21st century. In much of China, peasant farmers still work in ancient ways. But now, they are eager for change. Since the 1970s, Communist China has experimented with capitalism. Their leader, Deng Xiaoping, declared, "To get rich is glorious." As many as 100 million Chinese moved to coastal cities and new industrial centers. Foreign investment, much of it from overseas Chinese, has given Shanghai a spectacular skyline. With its population of over 1 billion, China will be a 21st century giant. No one knows how China will use that strength. At the millennium's end, people throw off restraint and seek to rediscover sharing and community. In the American desert, city folk gather. Through ritual fire, they reconnect to the earth, to life and death, to dark human instincts. They celebrate destruction and rebirth, which will mark the next millennium too.